Okay, can I welcome you to this webinar? I'm Francis SEALEY from Global Net 21 and Enfield Voices, and this is the third, I think, the third online hustings, live online hustings that we're doing, which we're doing on our webinar system, and we're also streaming live to several Facebook pages and groups. And I'm doing this with Emma Rigby, who you'll see join us in a minute. And Emma is from Love Your Doorstep. Now, in the previous webinars and live streams, we've interviewed counsellors, some brand new counsellors, some more experienced counsellors. But this time we've got, inverted commas, bigwigs. We've got the leaders of the various parties. And Emma's going to introduce them to you in a minute. But let me say, please type your comments up as they speak. We'll try and pick up as many questions as we can. We have questions of our own in case there are any pauses, but please type your questions and we will pick them up as much as we can. Anyhow, I'm going over to Emma now, who will introduce you and introduce the candidates and ask the first question. So Emma, over to you, as usual.
Good evening, Enfield. What a great thing to be doing on a Tuesday night. We had it on Friday night last week, but Tuesday night interviewing our leaders of our parties that are all part of the local elections coming up on the 3rd of May. So I just want to run through with you who we've got with us this evening. First of all, we've got Dave Mitchell from the Lib Dem Party. Hi,
Hello.
Dave.
Hi, Emma.
We've got Kate McGregor from the Green Party.
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Doug Taylor from the Labour Party.
Good evening, Emma.
Good evening, and JOANNE LABAN from the Conservative Party.
Evening, Emma.
Evening. Right, so the first question, and I want to keep, we really want to hear about how you feel as leaders about this, but let's start by you telling us why people should vote for you. Okay, so what has your party got to offer the people of Enfield? So if we can start with Dave to take it away.
Sure, Emma. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, I'm an Enfield resident. I've been in Enfield my whole life. I was born here and I'm really passionate about the borough. And when I decided that I wanted to get involved locally, I looked around at the options with things like Brexit, with things like responsible local devolution of powers, and the party that spoke to me was the Liberal Democrats. Since then, I got involved and I set up really the current Liberal Democrats you see now, which is the biggest presence we've had in the borough for quite some time. We're very excited to be here. We want to offer you guys much more of a voice. We don't think the other two big parties are listening to you. And we want to offer something different and something fresh, a way we can challenge the accepted orthodoxy from the other two parties. We will ask you questions, we will get representation for you, and we will listen to you. And that's what we want to do. We want to represent you, perhaps where the others are letting you down.
Great, thank you. And Kate, if we can move to you.
Okay, thanks, Emma. So we think the Green Party is the only party locally that truly puts the environment and people at the heart of its policies. We've got concrete proposals over on how we improve different issues in the borough, promoting low traffic neighbourhoods in areas where there's, sorry, I'm really nervous, as you can tell. Promoting low traffic neighbourhoods in areas where there's lots of congestion. We've got suggestions of how we'd improve the Enfield town and our borough streets, which hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about. We're committed to protecting the environment, so we tackle air pollution. We're committed to improving recycling. We think we have got radical proposals, and we'd like the chance to talk to. Well, I'd like the chance to talk to you about them tonight, and we'd like the chance to put them into action by you voting for us.
Brilliant. JOANNE?
Oh, hello. Why should you be voting for the local Conservatives? Well, we want to deliver a borough of opportunity for all, so all residents can have a chance to succeed in Enfield, whether that's a good school place for every child, apprenticeships, but a great environment in which to live. We want people to be proud to come to Enfield and deliver the best borough to live, work and visit.
Right. Doug?
Well, Emma, I think our record over the last 8 years is good despite the 160 million of cuts that we've had to make. We've got ambitious plans for the future, and we recognise the scale of the challenge going forward, and we've got good committed candidates. But I think there is another issue, and that is that the government needs a message in these local elections that the people don't want to have more cuts, and we want to defend our public services. So I think there's a local message to get the best candidates to deliver, and a message to Theresa May that enough is enough of cuts to public services.
It's interesting you said that, Doug, because my next question was, people vote in local elections very often on national issues, and really that's a defeatism argument about local democracy. Surely when people vote for local elections, they should be voting for the local council. Now, how do you convince people that these elections really are about your council and how you shape up yourself? I mean, the turnout was quite low for local elections compared with national elections. How do you convince people this is about local issues in your local council? I'll let you come back, Doug, and then the others.
Well, local matters. You know, when I leave my front door, I walk along pavements maintained by the local authority. I go past schools which have been built by the local authority. I cross roads maintained by the local authority. I see street cleaners and dustmen who are keeping the street clean for the local authority, all on behalf of residents. When I go into the civic centre, we have staff working on social care, looking after children. There's a whole host of issues that affect every single one of us every day. We don't always reflect on that, but that's a fact. My view is that Labour does a better job and has better values than our opposition.
Okay, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Doug. A lot of the services that are provided at a local level, you know, all of the services that councils provide, when you vote in a local election, you're having a say over how those services are run. And so this is your chance to impact on your local community and your opportunity to improve your local community and to have a say. So I think it's really important that people vote, and it is about kind of local issues. This is your chance to get involved in your community and have a say. So yeah, you should, yeah. Okay,
and Joanne.
Well, as the other leaders have said, it is about everything that's outside your front door. In reality, is what local councils deliver. It's your bins, it's your pavements, it's also your leisure centres, it's your trees, it's your parks you visit. So everything that's in your neighbourhood is more or less delivered by Enfield Council, and that's why these are so important. And local issues matter, and I think that they're actually the most important, because when they step outside your front door, that's what you're faced with. And I think we need to do a lot more on educating people about what levels of government deliver services, because Enfield Council really does deliver the services that matter most to the people.
Okay, and Dave?
I think there's a huge opportunity at this election, not just to decide the next administration and how it looks, but also to actually enfranchise you, the voters, because we're certainly committed to democratising the process further and devolving powers to local communities. I'm certain I can work with other parties to achieve that. And so this is actually a chance to be a bit of a turning point for Enfield, and to actually really get some local accountability beyond just turning up every 4 years to vote, to get real involvement. And I'm sure I can count on my opponents here to back me up on that.
Okay, thanks. And Emma, over to you.
Great. So if we now move on to the topic of housing. So in the polls, according to people, it's a major issue. What do you offer to solve the housing crisis that is different from the other parties? So if we can start with Joanne on this one. So what do you offer that's going to help solve this crisis?
Well, we would get on with the task at hand. We have had, I would say, a period where we haven't built as many houses as we could have done, and it's time for change. We have in our candidates people with backgrounds of delivering housing, both in the public and private sector. So we've got professionalism within the Conservative team, but it's about outcomes and pushing for housing to be delivered. because that is one of the most important issues, if not the most important issue in London. And you have to be focused. It's okay having the vision, but you have to make it the reality. And you have to have the drive and ambition to deliver that. And I believe the Conservatives do.
Great, thank you. Kate, housing.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that we offer that I don't think the other parties do is a fundamental redefinition of of affordable. So at the moment, affordable is generally means 80% of the market rate. So if you look at average rents in London in 2016, that was £1,400 per month, which is almost double the national rent average across England. So the Green Party believes passionately in redefining what is affordable housing, and we argue it should be 65% rather than 80% of the market rate. And that applies to all kind of London housing that's being produced, being built by councils. We would abolish right to buy. We feel that social housing stock needs to remain property of councils. Otherwise, we see this reduction that we've experienced over the past 20 or 30 years. We think that council housing should be built by council-owned organisations, and I think that's something that Enfield have done, I think, recently with the Red Lion organisation that it's established. So it's important that money isn't being leaked out of the housing system by private developers building council housing. And we think there should be stronger rights for renters. So we support the establishment of renters' unions that give renters rights equivalent to kind of homeowners. It's probably other things.
That's great, Kate, thank you. And Doug?
Well, I think we have to recognise that getting more housing is not the simplest thing in the world. There are three elements to it. The first one is land. You need the land to develop. The second one is capital, money, to make sure that you can build. And the third one is issues around planning that need to be in place. Now, we need to corral all those three together in an effective way. And I think we are moving in that direction. We have big targets to go forward. Our population is increasing in the borough. We will have targets set by the London Mayor of nearly 2,000 units per year in the coming years. And so we have to make sure that we get sensible use of money and we have appropriate land that we can use. So Meridian Water will be the biggest of our developments, and we need to work to make sure we get good value for the taxpayer in that. The council has taken the risk to buy the land and remediate it. That needs to be recovered through the development of the land. And on that, we would hope to have 10,000 homes at the end of the project. But it will be a 20-25 year project. Great,
thank you. And Dave?
Well, we have taken the example of the Lib Dem Council in Sutton. They have set up their own housing partnership, which means they can build their own houses themselves. They can choose the kind of mix they have and what they need. Now, this allows us to build accommodation for vulnerable people that haven't got accommodation. It allows us to offer genuinely affordable housing, whether it's to buy or to rent. And it allows us to avoid using developers that were buying sites, demolishing on the site, then land banking it and delaying the building targets. There are some ambitious targets from the Labour administration. They haven't made them yet, and we are lagging behind the other boroughs on affordable housing. We think this is quite a revolutionary programme. We've seen it work elsewhere in London, and we think Enfield deserves the same.
Okay, Joe.
Hello?
Have we done youth for housing?
No.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, we have, haven't we?
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
Yeah,
right, Francis, you're next.
Yeah. I think we've done you all, haven't we, on housing? So that's good. Okay. I mean, just one factual question. Maybe you can answer this very briefly. Doug, Mark Fisher says, can local councils abolish the right to buy, or is it a national issue?
The right to buy is a national programme. The council has no ability to move beyond that. What we have tried to do, and Kate helpfully mentioned Red Lion Homes, is to try and utilise right to buy receipts with debt finance for that new housing association in order to build locally. So we don't get pound for pound on right to buy. It's hard to utilise it without bringing in extra capital, and therefore we set up a new way to do that. But no, we can't unilaterally change the policy.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, Mark just wants to know that. I hope you didn't mind me asking, Doug, everyone. One of the other issues that has come up, particularly on social networks, is community safety. I mean, what policies do your party have of trying to get a safer borough? With the growth of knife crime, there's a tremendous amount of apprehension around at the moment. How do you plan to approach that? Let's go to Kate first.
Okay, well, we're in favour of increasing the number of community police officers on our streets, and thinking about knife crime as more as a health issue and a social issue rather than just a criminal issue. So working more with local communities, looking at protecting youth services. So there's been a huge cut to the funding of youth services. I think particularly I know Enfield has had over 2 million cuts, I think, in recent years. So we feel passionately about protecting youth services and then making sure that young people are given the support that they, as much support as they can to kind of avoid lives of crime. In the context of violent crime in Enfield, I think it's important to recognise that 1/3 of violent crime is domestic abuse, and that's happening in a lot of homes, and that there's a role there for community networks and different organisations in the voluntary sector to tackling that. I think that we need to recognise that the huge cuts that the Met Police have had as a result of cuts to national funding, and I know that there's a lot of anger about the closure of recent police stations, but I think we do need to concentrate resources where they're needed the most. And if the closure of those frontline services means more police officers on the street, then I think we need to recognise that resources are tight as a result of national cuts to the police budget. I think the Met Police has had over £600 million worth of cuts since 2010 and has got to find another £400 million of cuts by 2020. So, we need to appreciate the impact of the Conservative cuts to police budgets on local policing and the impact that's having on the safety of our communities.
Okay, and Joanne?
Well, in terms of, clearly policing comes under the Mayor, and we work in partnership with delivering community safety in the borough, and I think that's a key thing to state. I mean, as Kate said, the Conservatives would like to increase the amount of council-funded police officers as part of our policies, and would obviously campaign to reopen Enfield Police Station, because my view is the geography of Enfield, and different boroughs, including Bexley, did a good campaign and had decisions changed on police stations, and that didn't happen for Enfield. And if that was still the Mayor's view to continue, I would also look to house officers, if that was something that the borough commander and the Met would allow, in the civic centre. So the central area of Enfield would still feel that they have a strong police presence in Enfield. But on the edge of knife crime, it's about working with the community. It's about prevention before someone gets hurt. And I remember working sometime with Kit Malthouse, who's the Deputy Mayor for Policing, first under Boris Johnson. And in 2007-8, we had a similar spout of knife crime. And he made a point of going and meeting the victims' relatives and finding out how young people got into the area of knife crime. And also always keeping that in mind, that every life matters. And when one is ended through knife crime, that should spur us on to make us do better. It shouldn't be something that's a fact of life in Enfield or just living in any big city. It is something that we all care about. They're all Enfield residents, they're all people, and we always need to keep that in mind. I had a meeting not so long ago and I said, well, could you give me an update on this particular knife crime incident? And they said, oh, councillor, but there's one a night. But that's not the attitude to me. That's every person's son or daughter. And we need to keep that in mind. But it's also giving young people opportunities, because if they've got work or education opportunities, they may not be turned into the environment of crime. We want children to have the most good opportunities, and so they don't have to go in that line of environment where knife crime is prevalent. But we need to work with victims and families to inform policy, so we intervene before something gets worse.
Okay, and Dave?
Well, there's three strands to this policy for us. First of all, echo Kate completely. We'd look to take the approach of the Glasgow Initiative, treat this as a public health problem, so we can bring to bear NHS clinicians, social workers, all together to deal with this problem. get social workers on call to A&E departments. They can get there, get inside, find out what happens. There's a lot of a reluctance to talk to the police, and police trust has been lost to a degree by these communities. So we are proposing the police wear body cameras to help rebuild trust. I had an incident, unfortunately, a young gentleman died at the end of my road, and I went to go and speak to some of the young lads about it. And they said, listen, we'll never talk to the police, we'll never tell them anything. We don't trust them, we don't think they've got their best interests at heart. Now, this is not a slight against the Enfield Police, the Metropolitan Police in Enfield. They do an excellent job, and we would be looking, a lot, as well as the other parties, to supporting and increasing, sponsoring their numbers. But this is a real issue that needs to be addressed. It's an issue of trust. So we need to make sure that the young men have other options available to them. And the final thing is, we think it's a solution that's really affecting the young, and we want to involve the young. One of the measures that we want to do to increase the rights and responsibilities of Enfield Youth Parliament is to get them front and centre in this debate. They've got the knowledge, they've got the contacts within those communities, they've got ideas of how things are going on. We want to put them right at the centre of this discussion.
Okay, and Doug.
I think the government in its discussions around this has recognised this is a difficult issue, and there are no simple solutions. If there were, then they would have been adopted already. But I would agree with Kate that there needs to be a recognition that police on the streets is a useful thing, and the 20,000 cuts nationally and the 600 million being lost in London already have not made that easy. And we, as a council, have funded our own police, and we said as a Labour side that we'll fund more in the future. There is a clear issue about the use of drugs, and drugs as an economy that needs to be tackled. We already do and need to consider the best ways to intervene with troubled families and how you can best assist young people away from any criminal activity, but also in central government funding. So there is an issue there in what we do with our young people generally. But I think this is a difficult issue that will take some time to resolve. But I think it's one of the most important issues that people raise on the doorstep best we can. Because I take the point that was made by Joanne. Any injury to one of our young people, any death, is an absolute tragedy. And we can't accept in this day and age that continues.
Okay, Emma, over to you.
Okay, thank you for those. I want to talk now about a sustainable future for Enfield. So, yeah, we'll start with Kate on this one, I think. I hope that's okay. But let's talk about the sustainable future. So how will you develop a sustainable Enfield?
Okay, so what is a sustainable Enfield? I think that it's important to recognise that sustainability and isn't just about the environment, although obviously the Green Party care a great deal about that. It's about a strong local economy. It's about promoting well-being and educational opportunities and protecting the environment and encouraging people to do what they can to look after their local environment and to protect the global environment. So what does that mean for Enfield? Well, I think it definitely means a more sustainable transport system. We are one of the few parties, it seems, that is willing to go on record and say that we think Cycle Enfield is a great scheme. I know it's got its problems, and that there are parts of it that have upset people and that perhaps need review. But ultimately, it's a scheme. It's a huge investment that's not come from the council. It's come from GLA funding. It's promoting healthy lifestyles. It's promoting cycling, and it's encouraging people to reduce their car use and to cycle more and to find sustainable forms of transport. So those are the kind of schemes which I think we're in favour of. I think we need to look at, obviously, some people will know I work on a farm, so I care a great deal about food and the importance of that and health. And I think it's something we need to think about more widely in the borough. We've got very high levels of obesity, particularly among children. So we can look at more sustainable food systems, look at producing more food locally. There's a lot of farmland still around Enfield that could be being used more productively. We're committed to tackling air pollution. We've got extraordinarily high rates of air pollution in the borough. So the Green Party is committed to expanding the ultra low emission zone to include all of Enfield and not just stopping at the North Circular, which is currently proposed. And in terms of creating sustainable communities and housing, I mean, one thing I should have said when I was talking about housing, and my party will kill me for not mentioning it, is passive house standards. So we're committed to all houses being built to the highest environmental standards, being built to last. I think it's a fantastic thing that some of Enfield's recent housing developments have won RIGBY awards for the quality of the housing. And I think that's really to be celebrated, because it's not just about creating homes and building houses, it's about sustainable communities and making places that people want to live in and can live happy lives in. Okay. So sustainability is a wide concept. I think a sustainable Enfield is one where people look out for each other and they're happy and they look after the environment. So yeah, I think it's a complicated but a very aspirational thing to be looking towards.
Great, thank you. Doug?
Yeah, I mean, I think Enfield is one where people have a job, where people have a home, and people are part of a strong community. So I think as the building blocks going forward, that's what we're looking for. I would echo much of what Kate has said. We will want to invest in the local economy, and we've already discussed the need for more affordable homes. So all those issues have already been discussed. In terms of the green agenda, if I can put it that way, we've created our Lee Valley Heat Network to use energy in a low carbon way for Lee Valley, which I think is a very sustainable aspect of policy. I think our view that we need to get Crossrail 2 into the borough to make it easier for people to move around and access jobs in different parts of London and indeed north to Cambridgeshire. I was part of the West Anglia task force looking at how we can improve the train numbers on the line from Cambridge into central London. So trains are important, as are buses, to make sure that people can use public transport. And of course, Kate mentioned Cycle Enfield. I know not everybody is a fan of Cycle Enfield, but I mean, I think we just need to look at how we can get people both to be more physically active themselves, which is a bit better for them and better for the National Health Service, because of some of the health issues that arise through inactivity, also reducing air pollution and allowing people a nice and enjoyable way to travel safely. So I think there's a cocktail of issues around all of that. But I think it's a very good question, because we want to ensure that the next generation and the generation after that can enjoy Enfield to the best. And so there's an individual and a collective drive in all of that.
Great, thank you. Dave?
Hi, yeah, I mean, we've got a few initiatives here that we'd like to talk about. It's no surprise to you to know that I defer to a lot of Kate's points. They're excellent points, and I agree with her completely. However, regarding the Cycle Enfield project itself, we support the concept, we support the initiative. We're very, very pro-cycling as a party nationally, and we just feel it was a bit of a missed opportunity to really engage the community. A lot of people felt left behind for the process. We've got no air pollution studies on the route. So at the moment, all major parties have accepted that congestion is worse at the moment. We won't know when air quality improves, which would have been a great opportunity to really, really sell the project to the car users and to really motivate people on that. So yeah, I mean, we 100% support the initiative. We just don't support the implementation at all. It was a missed opportunity. Regarding the council, I think we can take the lead on sustainability. I think we need to make sure that we're using service providers that use environmentally friendly vehicles. I think we need to look at how we can support the future sustainability tech of people's personal electric cars. So how we can install points for those going forward. That is the future technology. It's the way it's going. And also improving transport links. We've been running our W10 campaign. We've been getting involved in improving accessibility to the major overground stations for disabled and elderly users. They're not the easiest to get on and not the easiest to use, so they're forced to use their cars. Let's make it easier for them. And finally, supporting our parks. If you're going to have a sustainable community, I totally agree, exercise and physical well-being is the key to that. So let's make sure our parks are properly staffed. We can do that with creative initiatives. One of the ones we love is the Palmer's Greenery in Broomfield Park. We'd like to see that extended and across more parks where Friends of the parks can get their own, healthy options, food options available to users, which then helps fund the parks, to staff the parks, to maintain the parks. And we think that's a great model that the communities can really buy into, and we're really pro that.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Can I just, before we move to Jo, Francis, you gave up your car, didn't you?
I gave up my car, yes.
You walk everywhere now.
I do. Look how fit I am.
There you go, look how fit he is. He walks everywhere. JOANNE, what's your take on this?
Well, I think that in terms of sustainability, it is a wide-ranging issue that across all sort of departments. When it comes to our parks, we need to make sure that our parks are 100%. We need to encourage the more emphasis on more trees to help the environment. But actually, it's also about transport. It's about Crossrail 2, which I support with Doug to get through, and it's something that we've both supported in order to get the eastern side of the borough. It would really revolutionise that side, both economically and with transport links. But we also need to look at recycling. I think everyone's do Blue Planet on plastics, and we're only going to get that down if all levels of government join in, and that's going to be important. Our recycling level has stayed around the same at 38%, but if you take it in context that London is the worst region for recycling in the UK, compared to, we'd still need to go up. And we need to really push on communication with our residents on the right things in the right bin. Some people get confused because the information on the bin lid is different from the information on the internet. And we need to make sure that our residents know how to help our environment best. And I agree totally on air quality. It is about going to electric vehicles, but people are only going to go to electric vehicles if we've got the infrastructure to make it easier. If it's as easy to fill up your petrol in your car as it is to charge your vehicle, that's when people are really going to think more successfully about moving to electric vehicle. That's what I want to see, more charging points delivered by the council. I'd like to see the Mayor of London deliver more rapid charging points out in Enfield, because they only take 30 minutes to charge a car, and that is, in some people says, the only time they've got. And so it's about a menu of opportunities for sustainability, but also with housing as well. We need to make sure, continue with work on our housing stock to be sustainable, using the refit programme that the Mayor does. We have gone into and used mayoral programmes before, but it is now being linked into the private sector, so all homes can have a chance to be sustainable and really be good on low energy. But like I said, sustainability is actually a whole envelope of opportunities in all areas of the council.
Okay, well, we've got some questions coming in. I mean, Debbie Dean, for example, says, we all believe in sustainability. I guess we all do. We all believe in motherhood and apple pie, but you believe in it, but how do we pay for it? And Jamie Ashton raises that point as well. He says, we're facing squeezes on local government. They're not getting the resources that they need. They're having to look at innovative ways of doing things. How can you do all these things on increasingly reduced budgets? Doug?
Well, I mean, some of it is about doing things in a slightly different way. So when I mentioned the Lee Valley Heat Network, it is about delivering low carbon alternative supplies of energy. So that's about doing something different. But some of the other areas are, of course, about, as a local authority, making the case both regionally and nationally. So if we talk about some of the issues about air pollution, it is about making the case on a regional basis. So I think there are areas where we, as a local authority with others, can try and ensure that with regional government or with central government, some of the things that need to be done to improve sustainability occur. So both JOANNE and I have mentioned Crossrail 2. That requires a funding cocktail to be agreed between the Mayor and central government to make this work. We as a local authority can point to the economic and social benefits that come out of Crossrail 2 and how we can play our part in making it work. So I think there is both what we do as a local authority and what can be done. If I could just take one area that's had a lot of issues recently, which is about water and about the issue of drinking fountains, which is part of the Mayor and Thames's plan. And certainly drinking fountains, if they can be hygienically created, are things that I think from a local authority we would want to support. The other imaginative way is to incentivise retailers to make it possible for residents to fill up water bottles in shops, because I think there are ways that we can, as a community, work together. Because at the end of the day, this should be one where there is a shared vision of what we want to achieve. That is to make sure that within this planet we live within our resources and in individuals, we are able to live with a good quality of life.
Okay, and Kate?
Good question. I think one thing to state is that very often when we're talking about sustainability and waste and wasted resources, the way that you can kind of act sustainably is by avoiding waste and making avoiding waste, and which is therefore saving money. So if you look at improving energy efficiency, whether that's in a business or within homes, what we're actually doing is saving money, and that's the same with waste. Very often if you're buying a lot of excess packaging, if you're looking at whether that's food wrap or bottles, it's resources that you're paying for, those resources which you don't necessarily need. So I think very often reducing waste and looking at environmental improvements is actually about kind of it is in itself an efficiency rather than something that costs more. I think taking advantage of pots of regional and national funding when it's available. So I think the Cycle Enfield is a good example of that, taking advantage of LGA funding. And I think there are these pots of money that become available, and I know that there's one there's a pot of money becoming available soon for more livable neighbourhoods and looking at kind of low traffic neighbourhoods, and I think that's those are the sort of things that the council needs to take advantage of. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, well, let's go to Dave.
Okay, so I think a lot of the measures that we've proposed aren't too expensive. Small extensions of bus routes to give people those options don't cost much extra. Choosing your suppliers, your procurement at the Civic Centre is just a question of changing who you're getting to do as your contractors. And I think actually our parks project, it's designed to pay for itself. It's designed to encourage and to support, and us as councillors to go out and be proactive in creating a space where the community can own it, the community funds the project, and so we're not asking them for more money, we're just asking for time, commitment, and we're giving them a stake in it. And I think that's how people want to see local government working.
Okay, Joanna?
Well, as I said previously, this will only work if all levels of government work together, and it's not just government, it's communities. So we have a real change have a game changer in the way that we do sustainability, whether it's the Friends of the Park group. I am currently a member of 4 of them, and they do excellent work, and I've encouraged them to get more involved in the council and work with them, because I think that they're passionate people who want to do something for our park. They plant trees, something that extra that the council wouldn't want to do. But it's also I was talking about electric charging points. That can be paid for by LIP funding, or there's extra measures going in there, or for Section 106 agreements. There are other pots of money. It doesn't have to just come directly from the council. And it's actually, with the recycling, just doing the education of educating the community on what extra we can do, because that's one of the ways that's fairly cheap, but in the way of getting results. But like I said, accessing other pots of money and working together is one of the main things. But on the Lee Valley Heat Network, it will only work if we've got homes, because the homes become the customers of the heat network. So it's one does roll into the other with that one. But like I said, we have to all work together on sustainability.
Well, I thought we could just move quickly, because I'm looking at the time, that I want to move on to this fly tipping saga. Okay, so there's been a lot of publicity over recent weeks about fly tipping. I'm going to come straight back to you, Joanne. Talk a little bit to us about your fly tipping campaign. And then I'd really like to hear from Doug about his take on this as well, and then obviously from the other 2 parties. But Joanne, tell us more about this campaign that you're doing.
Well, we were alerted to the Angel Road fly tipping close to where the Angel Road station is, and there was a large amount of fly tipping that was near housing and a park and close to a waste and metal recycling centre, and it was there for a long time, and it was a difficult site, and I'm sure Doug is going to come back with it, but I have a feeling with fly tipping and rubbish is that giving a good environment for everyone gives everyone a great place to live, regardless of background that you have. So that's why I've been pushing on fly tipping for people to see what it's like when someone has got dumped loads of rubbish, and we have been pushing it and over the internet to show people this is what's happening in our neighbourhood, and it's not good to do, and it's up to the council to take it away, and we need to be more proactive on that. And sometimes it's left, I believe, in some of the poorer parts of the borough for longer, and that might be because it's more difficult, but I know that in some ways we need to encourage residents to report it, because I know that the rubbish that I saw, the huge river of rubbish in Edmonton, I know that would have probably been called in much quicker if it had been in the west of the borough. So it is about making sure our whole borough is clean and making sure residents report it. We're quicker on the uptake on getting rid of it. It's not always easy, but it is a primary thing that everyone, no matter what background, whatever pay you have, you can enjoy a good quality of life if our streets are clean, and that's fundamental. And that's why I've been calling it out on the internet. But like I said, I understand Doug will say it's a complicated issue. It's about making sure people report it, but also being proactive on it.
Okay.
Right, okay, so if we can move to Deb for this one. Because as a local resident, it was quite shocking to see, but I'm sure that there are reasons, and you know, so it would be good to hear your point of view, because it did look like a river, didn't it?
Well, I think firstly we should just analyse fly tipping as such. The vast majority of fly tipping that takes place in London boroughs is household waste, and there are a variety of reasons for that, and I can go into them if you want. Where particularly in areas of housing multiple occupation, where the landlords have made insufficient arrangements for the disposal of waste. So there are a whole series of issues related to the vast majority of waste. But I'll come very specifically to the Angel one. Now, in Outer London and in the counties that border Outer London, there is a problem of professional criminal activity with fly tipping. And interestingly enough, and Joanne will know this because it's within her own ward, at the end of my road, recently there was a similar, much smaller, but similar activity with the dumping of builders' material and wood on a piece of private land. And so it happens on private and public land. Now, the first thing you need to do is to ensure whether you can find any evidence as to the people who perpetrated this, because this is a terrible and continuing issue in Outer London and in the counties. So that was the first thing. The second is a very big piece of fly tipping, but not the only fly tipping taking place in the locality. And what officers did was to get a specialist, because you couldn't just do it from the council, you need to contract a specialist to lift it up, and that's what happened. And that took a little bit of time. And so we've looked for the evidence and have cooperated with government agencies. The site itself, which was open land, and Enfield has a great amount of open land, and that's a great thing, but also allows people to come along with criminal intent. This particular site has now got gates at the front, it's got concrete blocks behind the gates, it's got bunding. So this was complicated. It was complicated simply because, firstly, there is an importance, I think, to try and ensure these things don't happen. And so we need to establish evidence to take prosecutions to make sure that this criminal activity doesn't occur in our borough or elsewhere. But we also need to ensure that we clean these up as we can. And this was one that was a very, very large, I accept a very large tip, and very expensive for all of us to pay for. So officers got the best possible price to clear it up in tandem with clearing up another site, and that's what happened. And I hope that site will not get tipped again simply because of the protection it's now being afforded. But if you ask me, can I guarantee that such tips won't occur in other parts of the borough? I can't. It may occur on open public land. It may occur on private land, because it's clearly the business model that works for those with this criminal intent. And I think we need to just stamp out this sort of activity.
Just one more quick question. Are you finding it's actually people fly tipping and dumping rubbish, or is it people moving onto the site, putting up house there? Because we've just had that at the end of our road here on Parsonage Lane, haven't we? And
that's the same site I was referring to.
That's the site I thought it was actually. Wow, and they put those fences up very quickly at the end of the road there. But what a huge amount of rubbish to clear from that site. And
that will cost the owner a very sizable sum of money. And you can't fence off the entire borough. It will just, it's not the most attractive of fences. I think
no, it's not, is it?
We can't just fence everything off. So we need to enjoy our own.
They ran out of paint as well, Doug, because they've only painted half of it. I was going to go and get the kids out there in the weekend and do the other half.
But at some point,
shall we go to?
That will have to be that material will have to be removed. And that will cost the owner a considerable amount of money. So I think we, as a community, have a collective interest in trying to stop criminal activity like this.
Right, Kate.
Okay, well, I think I just want to come back on something that Joanne said about the fly tipping would have been picked up earlier if it was in the west of the borough. I would refute that. I'm in Chase Ward, and there is a sea of land of fly tipped rubbish just north of Turkey Brook. It's been there so long it's visible on Google Earth. I believe it's finally being addressed, but it's very, very similar to the site that Joanne filmed. So I don't think it's just about, I think it's taking place across the borough. What can we do about it? I was told, I looked into the site that in this ward, and I was told that it's not owned by Enfield Council. It's actually owned by Haringey Council. Yes. So the council couldn't directly get it cleared immediately, but they could issue an environmental protection order and require it to be cleared in 28 days. Now, that could have been done much sooner, and I think that's something the council can look at doing on sites where there's fly tipping, so quicker action. I think the council could support landowners to install CCTV recognition technology on sites where there's repeated tipping going on, to try and track the vehicles involved. And I think we more proactively need to look at who's doing this fly tipping and finding ways of working with them to find solutions. So whether that's there's a lot of building waste, certainly in the site that's close to me, a lot of building waste. So working within the building community and looking at how that can be kind of resolved. I think at a much smaller level, a local level, a lot of the sort of domestic fly tipping that's going on, I think it's, as far as I know, it's still very expensive to pay to have bulky waste removed from a council collection. And I think that's something the council really needs to look at. When I moved to the area, which was 7 years ago, it was free. And I think it makes a huge difference expecting people to have to pay now a very large sum of money to have bulky waste removed. And I think that's something that we need to revisit.
Yeah, it is expensive, isn't it? I think we brought this up in one of the other interviews a few days ago, that I've just had some waste removed, and it costs a lot of money to do it. This is a topic we could discuss all evening, but I want to move on to Dave and ask for Dave's thoughts.
Okay, well, I'll keep it quick because there's a lot of topics to cover, and I've got a lot of things that I'd like to talk about. But very quickly, I totally agree. The cost of large, bulky items needs to be reviewed. The process of reporting needs to be advertised and made clearer to people how to report fly tipping. And finally, we were looking at the idea of amnesty days, where there are free access to the dumping facilities, where that can allow people to make a choice if they aren't able to afford it and it is prohibitive. Then we have designated days at the dumps when we can allow these people to get access, and we look at piloting that.
Oh, that might be like a stampede.
Yeah. And that's what we have to look at.
Let's start with the fly tipping now, because it's been a long time on it. Some of the really big issues as well are social care and education. And we're not going to we probably won't be able to go into both of them. But take education. People are feeling really worried about education. We did a meeting last night with Sir Anthony Selden and Melissa Benn, both of them different sides of the political spectrum, believe our education is in crisis, not because of funding, but because we're not doing it as well as Finland. We're not doing it as well as Canada. We're not respecting teachers and pupils. We're not giving them the education they need in the digital age. How would you go about improving it and helping students to get the education they need in this borough? Joanne?
Well, as having a head teacher in the family, I get regularly told about education and sort of teacher services. I think we need to make sure our borough is attractive for teachers to make it their home. And so we get the best teachers coming to Enfield, and that's about doing affordable housing and keeping up to make sure that we have the flow of teachers. We also have to have a very good school improvement service, because we have got some schools are very good, but we have got schools in the borough that requires improvement, and that's known. And we need to make sure that with the support network that the council can give, that it can improve our schools. But it's also giving children the best skills to succeed, and making sure that all schools provide a good standard of education, so all children get the best start in life, regardless of where they live in the borough. But it's about making it a good place to live, so we attract the teachers, but it's also about supporting the school service where we can. Clearly with academies and free schools, it's a slightly different relationship than with the LAA schools, but it's about making sure that our school improvement service supports schools so we can raise standards, so supporting both teachers and pupils to get the best in life.
Okay, Dave?
Well, education is my passion. That's the thing that really got me involved in politics generally, local politics. My sister's a school teacher in the borough. We do have some fantastic schools in the borough. There are some serious issues around school places. I know a lot of the primary school places that parents tried to get this time round, they were refused on all 6 choices. That's a real tragedy we don't want to see happen anymore. How can we solve it? Well, the first way to look at it is when we're developing new housing, the Section 106 money that's paid by the developers on those sites, we need to make sure that money is ring-fenced to make sure there's adequate education provision in the area where we can either prepare sites for schools to move in. We're not a fan of a one-size-fits-all academisation model. We do like council-run schools by the LEA. But there's innovative solutions as well. My sister is a trained forest school teacher. We have some wonderful green spaces, and we can take a lead from what goes on elsewhere in Europe. Trent Park, for example, hosts some forest schools, and we'd like to see more of that and roll it out across the borough. So that's some of our education proposals. Nationally, we are campaigning to bring the ability to build schools back into local authority hands, so we can decide where the need is, and also, removing things like teaching to the test and hitting educational standards, especially at the younger ages. So there's a lot of things about education. I could probably talk all night, and we've got a lot of other topics to cover, but I think that gives you a nice snapshot of some of the things we stand for locally. Okay, thanks. Doug?
Well, education is very important, and I think Enfield has a good story to tell. 9 out of 10 of our schools are either good or outstanding, so I think we have a good story to tell. However, taking up Joanne's point of view, one of the problems on school improvement is the government cut the budget to the local authority on school improvement. So that's an issue. I must take David to task a little bit, however. In the recent primary transfer, 96% of parents got their choices of either 1 to 3. So there was, I think, an ability for the local authority to help parents get towards what they wanted. Now, I recognise there will be some parents who are very deeply disappointed for not getting their first choice, or indeed not being part of that 96%. But it's one of the issues in supply and demand in terms of the allocation of primary places into secondary. Education is truly important. I had the great advantage of moving out of a village. I was the first person in my family to go to university. Education is a great way to enhance social mobility, but we need to ensure that all our children get that great opportunity, not only when they're in the school system, but in early years. And certainly what we have been doing and are introducing is work around school readiness to make sure that all the children in the borough start from a good place. Because the problem, of course, is if you're not in a good place by the time you get to 5, then your opportunities moving forward are going to be greatly reduced. So it is something that starts much earlier than just the school system, but we should celebrate all the efforts of our pupils in the borough who do on a regular basis achieve outstanding results.
Okay, and Kate?
I think it's tricky because I think that so much of educational policy is determined at a national level, and the Green Party at a national level are opposed to. We would get rid of Ofsted. We are opposed to the micromanagement of teachers, and I think a lot of the discussion around moving towards a system that's more like the education system in Finland, I think has to be led at a government level. We would like to see at a local level more cooperation between schools rather than competition, encouraging for schools and for teachers to work together and to collaborate. And I think there's a role for the local council in that. We're opposed to the increase in faith-based schools. We feel that they are divisive. And we're in favour of a more community-based schools which bring people together rather than dividing on the basis of faith. Definitely, like Dave, I'm a big fan of forest schools. My place of work supports a forest school nursery, so I think those alternative forms of education are a great thing. And I think related to that, vocational education. Looking at opportunities to get young people learning in the workplace, encouraging local businesses to take on apprenticeships, making sure that they're meaningful apprenticeships that where people, where young people are really learning skills for life, and thinking about lifelong learning as well. Increasingly people have careers, which involve lots of different, jobs now, not just necessarily the same career. And I think we need to be looking at ways that we can encourage adult education and pathways back into education for those who've been out of work for a long time. Whether that's through ill health or other issues. So I think education is really important, but we need to think about it very broadly rather than just thinking about young people and children.
Okay, we're very close to the end now, so I'm going to hand over to Emma for the last question. And she always has a strange last question, so I'm dreading to feel it.
I got distracted by a couple of questions that came through. So actually,
we'll go to your very last question, Emma.
My last question. I'm not going to talk about pubs tonight or restaurants. I'm going to ask you what your favourite pub is. We do love to go for a walk in Enfield. So Dave, if we can start with you, what's your favourite park and where do you like to go?
Well, I live right opposite Trent Park, and it is fantastic. I think it's a superb resource this borough has. But as I'm standing in Southgate Green, I also have to give a nod to Broomfield Park, where my mum and sister played netball. My mum's played there for 40 years, every Saturday and Wednesday. And so they're two excellent parks. But I mean, we are sport in Enfield. There's some fantastic parks around the borough.
Great, thanks, Dave. Joanne?
Well, I'll be cheeky and say two. One for general walk is Chase Green. It's not a park, it's a village green, but it's beautiful with the War Memorial and how people use it to commute, walk. It's just a tranquil area. But if I really want some fun, I'll go to Aldersbrook Park, where there's a zip wire, a trampoline, and lots more for young people to enjoy. So it depends what I'm doing, but naturally, Aldersbrook Park and Chase Green.
Great, thanks. Kate, this is a silly question, really, isn't it?
Well, I live and work in Fortyfield Park, so I can't really say anything other than that.
Doug?
Well, I mean, I think...
Do you get time?
Sorry?
Do you get time to take nice walks in the park, being the leader of...
I do like walking, and we'll walk to different parts of the borough, and there are some tremendous parks. I mean, I sometimes walk from where I live down to Grovelands in Winchmore Hill, which I think is a tremendously designed park. Thames Park in Edmonton. I mean, there are parks all over the borough, and that's one of the great things about Enfield. 126 parks and open spaces. It gives Enfield its character. And the great thing is, and what we need to ensure, is doesn't matter where you live in the borough, there ought to be access to open space and access to good facilities. And so for me, it's not ensuring we have parks around the borough meeting everybody's needs.
Okay, well, we've come to the end of our time now. We've had quite a lot of debate going out on the side, on the comments, debates around fly tipping, about special education needs, about how we communicate with our diverse communities in in the London Borough of Enfield, which is very diverse. And you can look at those when you see the live stream after this is over, and you may want to respond to them individually to the people who wrote. Anyhow, it's been a really, really good discussion, a really, really good debate. And as I say, this will be up live now immediately, and the recording will be there on Facebook for you to look at. It should be up on YouTube tomorrow, so you'll be able to disseminate it there as well. This is our penultimate live streamed webinar. We're doing our last one on May the 1st, and where we're inviting not the minor parties, but the parties and independents where there are less than 10 candidates across the borough, so they have a chance to take part as well. And we've already had a response from 4 or 5 of those that they would like to take part. So that will be our last one in our really quite interesting experiment of doing local hustings online. So thank you all of you, for taking part and putting yourself under this ordeal. And Emma, for your questions as well. It's great. So I hope we'll all see some of you again next Tuesday on May the 1st for the last of our local government online hustings. Thank you.